What can you learn in the next 21 minutes? Oh, I just can't wait to find out. Hi, I'm Kiki L'Italienne, and welcome to the 21 and 21 Talks, where invited speakers share their 21-minute talks about all kinds of topics. It ranges from beer brewing to house building to building a business. This series consists of 21 talks. They're 21 minutes long, and they're all taking place in 2021. Speakers can choose to use slides. They can choose to forego them entirely. They can use visuals. They can show pictures. They could speak in smoke signals, I guess, if they really wanted to. We haven't had that yet, but as long as they don't go over 21 minutes, the floor is theirs. All talks can be watched live or as replays on the Association Chat YouTube channel. And if you think that supporting Association Chat and the work that we do is something that will make your kids or your dog or your family love you more, you're probably right. You should listen to your intuition, and you should go over to patreon.com/association chat. Maybe check out how you can do that. For this special 21 and 21 talk, we're featuring Willis Turner, and we're going to do this talk a little differently than the others. I'm going to be doing a little mini interview discussion with Willis. Willis Turner has over 2 decades of association management experience, the past 15 years creating virtual events, and a background as a funeral planner led Willis to create a safe and engaging space for family and friends to gather online and pay tribute to their loved ones that have passed. And today, Willis is going to share with us what he's learned about transforming association events in his role as a virtual memorial gathering planner and moderator. Okay, so welcome, Willis. I'm so glad that you're here to do this. Yay.
Yeah, it's a great honor, Kiki, and thank you for inviting me.
Yes, and Beth says, hi, Willis. Thanks for sharing with us. Yes, we're all intrigued. We're all listening intently. I think that people who know you might know some things about you, running into you in the ASAE annual meeting. I know I'm always looking forward to talking with you and catching up. I see on social media some of the wonderful Epicurean delights that you come up with. But some of the things that I think that people may not understand or not know about you is that you have this other part to your life that you have been involved with that has to do with helping people to respect, people who have passed. And so what I want to do is just venture into that territory. Tell me the story of how you came to have this unusual combination of career paths?
That's a great question, and it kind of goes back to the very beginning. So I'm going to kind of lead you up to that.
Okay.
Trace back those thin threads to how I got here. And as you mentioned, we don't know a lot about our friends. We know some things. We know the things that they choose to share, or within the circles that we're join together with them in, and we share some common interests, but sometimes we're missing out on an important facet of somebody's life. And so it's kind of nice to trace back and find out those thin threads that led us to where we got today. And so I'm going to show you something here. This is a photo of my childhood home. And you can see it's a pretty humble little abode. And I would say that a lot of people have called nicer dwellings shacks, but that's that's the shack where I grew up. And if you can relate, if you're a reader, you will probably have read John Grisham's The Painted House, and that was kind of my dream as a child, was to have a painted house, because our house wasn't painted. And so that book really had a lot of meaning to me. And there was a little boy, the story told through the eyes of a young boy who wanted his house to be painted growing up. And so I don't share everything with that young boy, but I do share that common interest. And so growing up in that home, there were 7 children with my parents in a tiny house. Here's another photo. This is actually a photo of my parents with my brother and I. I'm a twin. I have an identical twin brother. And this just shows that it wasn't all work. Sometimes our family went to the woods and we had a picnic. And if you see the old cars there, and there's actually a car seat taken out of that Volkswagen and put on to the grass to use as a lawn chair. So that was what, there's a blanket on the ground, and it's pretty creative. Yeah. So that's early days of my life. And growing up in that kind of a condition, and in those conditions, we didn't know we were poor. Mm-hmm. We felt rich because we had good parents. My mom was a hard worker. My father was a hard worker. And one thing that my mom made sure, it didn't matter what kind of a dwelling we came out of, when we presented to the public, we had a clean face, clean fingernails, and clean clothes. And so that's how we presented. And she was diligent in that and making sure that those things happened. And we all had a Sunday go to meeting set of clothes. So we could be well presented. It didn't matter the background. So Mom tried to keep us to create that equality in our childhood as much as she could in the community. And so in those days, I was a daydreamer. I always dreamt about things. You know, I was a voracious reader. I liked to watch, look at pictures in books. We had encyclopedias. We got the annual Compton yearbook every year, which I poured through. And I can remember looking at pictures of things that in another world, like it was a strange world that was brought into our home through books and literature. And it was really interesting. And my mom's middle name is Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. And she is about the same age as Queen Elizabeth. And I drew a correlation there. And I used to dream about my mom being a queen. Oh, and I thought about, what if the queen actually came to our house? What would we need to do to get it ready? And what would it look like? Wow. And then what would it look like if we actually got to go to see the queen in her palace? And so those are just daydream thoughts that I had as a child. I remember a speaker once at an event that we had, and he talked about creativity and dreaming. And he asked everyone in the room, we're all adults, how many of us thought we were artists? Raise your hand. And out of a room of about 250 people, less than 10% of the people put up their hands. Mm-hmm. And he says, now let me take you back to kindergarten or preschool. And if I ask you the same question, how many people would put up their hands? And almost the whole room put up their hands. So isn't that interesting, Kiki, that we kind of lose that creativity along the road? And that can really be the key to success in life, is that creative side.
Well, and I think that's absolutely true. I think, you know, as you're sharing your story, one of the things that really stands out to me is that you were already at such an early age thinking about how would you prepare for you know, presenting to the queen? Should the queen visit your house? Or how would it be, you know, if you went to visit her, you know? And I think not a lot of people probably are going down that path. They're not asking themselves those questions. And so I think it's fascinating, the questions we ask ourselves and the things that we think we need to prepare for. It's almost as if some version of yourself, even that young, even at that early age, was already kind of putting pieces together. Like, what is it? How do you put these things together in the case of being prepared for an event? And so let's talk a little bit about creativity, because one of the things, another thing that you mentioned was this creativity of taking a car seat out and actually using it as seating for this forest, you know, picnic and everything. And these early photos, you know, in your family. I wanted to ask you about the role that creativity plays in your life, but also in the life of your family. Was your family creative? Did they connect you to any of the work that you do now?
Yes, I would say that growing up on a farm, you have to be creative. You have to be a problem solver. And my father we called him the farmer with the pencil, because he would sit in his lazy boy chair and get out the Free Press newspaper with a pencil, and he read it, but he also used the margins as scrap paper. And he used to calculate crop yields and different things that he used. And, today I wish I had some of those old newspapers with his scribblings in the margins, because he used every square inch of those as he sat there and just musing, and maybe he was dreaming too.
Yeah.
He was very capable. He also worked as a lineman on the mutual telephone when the telephones first came into the community. He was a lineman, so he got the spurs and put on his boots and climbed poles. He'd never done that before, and helped put the lines in so that we could have telephone. He got a welder, and he learned and taught himself how to weld, built his own blacksmith shop, and took in work from neighboring farmers when they needed equipment fixed. He was very creative, and problem solving was kind of what he did. He built, after we kind of the second generation of our home, as the family grew, he added on to it, and he ended up building a house around the old house, and then cutting down the old house out of the middle and carrying it out. We lived in it the whole time. And he did it all himself, with our help, but he was the creator. He learned how to wire. He was creative, and that's I think coming at it from a different perspective, and I call it analogous learning. And that's why I don't really want to try and help people here today learn how to do events better by telling them how to do events better. I want everyone to take these stories and extrapolate from them some ideas about how they can create change in their life, or change for their clients, or change for their members, because it's all about thinking differently. And when you're presented with a challenge, how do you solve it? Dig deep. Sometimes I think that we've been digging our wells with a spoon, and when we face a crisis like this pandemic, COVID-19, we need to get the shovels out. Because we need to dig a lot deeper to find the resources that are going to help us pull through, and help our friends and families and clients and members pull through.
Well, so how did you bring out your own shovel when COVID hit? Because I know for a lot of our friends who we have a lot of mutual acquaintances, I know for the association and events industry, it was and has been very, very tough to navigate all of the changes that happened when a lot of the things that were taking place, events and conferences that were taking place in person, moved to virtual. And it disrupted a lot of different people's lives, obviously for many different reasons, not the least of which was financially, and the direction that we, have in our careers. So a lot of people did find themselves having to problem solve, while they were building the house, while they were living in it, right? Trying to problem solve while they were in the thick of everything. How did it impact you?
Well, I'll tell you what happened is I travel pre-COVID about 150 days a year.
Wow.
150 hotel nights. I'm a platinum, it's called titanium now, Marriott lifetime customer. I've spent over 6 years of my life in Marriott hotels. And that's a lot of travel. On March 12th, 2020, I stepped off an airplane in Vancouver coming from Orlando, Florida, and stepped into a whole new world. And I haven't flown since. It's not that I don't want to, but life has changed. And so I had to go into quarantine at the recommendation of our government. And so I had 2 weeks of solitude to think and to gain some introspective on where I've come from and what I want to do, where I want to go. And while I was out on these lonely walks, I found it very invigorating and very soul-searching. And I thought back to my early days in 1979. This was the office that I worked in. And this is a funeral home office.
Wow.
It was very Art Deco.
I love it. It's actually very in right now,
Yeah, very in and very analog.
Yeah.
There were no computers, nothing electronic. There was a telephone on the desk. It was a rotary dial phone. and there was a big old ashtray on the floor on a
Oh
stand
my
in the
gosh.
room.
Yeah.
Times have changed. But I thought back to those days and I thought, wow, there's something there that I can see is going to be a need in the marketplace of people, because I know family and friends that are going through loss. And what are they doing? How can they cope with this when they can't actually meet in person? They can't bring their community together to grieve and to share stories and memories. This is a really important part of our culture. And it doesn't really matter what your background is, your religion, your race, your language. We all need these collective communities to come together to help us. And there's a lot to the grieving process, and it looks different for everyone. But we're being robbed of this by the pandemic, that being able to get together. And so I thought, well, I've been doing virtual events for associations, and our company has been doing that for over 15 years. How can I mash those two things together? So I don't really call it a pivot. I don't really like that word. It's not interesting to me. But I thought of really drawing on those skills and the experience of meeting those families back in 1979 in that room. And how can we recreate that as much as possible in the digital world? And so what my goal was to help communities to come together through the lens of virtual events. And that's really the mission, bringing communities together and helping them. And what we found out is really amazing and surprising, because virtual events are very intimate.
So please tell me more. Yeah, tell me more about that, because that is not the sort of thing you hear from people in general, when they're at least when they're talking about the virtual conference or the virtual. So tell me about the intimacy that you're seeing in the virtual event.
So have you ever sat in a conference? Think of an ASAE conference where you've got thousands of people in the general session room, and you might have scored a seat maybe 5 or 6 rows back, but you really still can't see the person speaking.
Right. Yeah.
You can't see their expression. You can't read their emotion. You can hear their voice and you can see them moving on the stage, but you can't really up close and personal see them. And in the virtual world, we can bring people just like we are right onto the screen in front of our audience, 12 to 18 inches away. And it's kind of like going back to the days of storytelling in prehistoric times, when our ancestors might have gathered around a fire pit sitting on rocks, and the light of the fire would be flickering on their faces and their emotions would be raw. They were totally exposed to those who were listening, and you could see everything. You could hear and see and smell. Everything was there. Well, we can't smell in the digital space, but we can see and hear. And we can bring those faces, those weathered faces, those beautiful faces, right onto the screen. And we can discover the story behind the face as it unfolds and helps to tell the story of a loved one. And the emotion is very raw. And you mentioned in the opening about creating safe spaces. And that's also what we want to do, is create a safe space for those people who are coming together, that community, whether it's the family, the close family, the extended family, or the friends. They get to come together in a place that we've created for them that's a safe environment, where it's safe for them to tell their story and safe for them to listen.
Can you share with me some of the parallels that association event planners can draw between the safe spaces that you're creating for these families and the safe spaces that they need to create, or that they can create in virtual meetings? Because I do think that for some people, there is a struggle to get to the point where you are collecting those stories, where you are, creating that interactive component that allows for people to feel closer.
Yes, I think that the first thing is to help reduce anxiety. Mm-hmm. And we've all, anyone who has spoken at any event, whether it's virtual or in person, gets a little bit of the butterflies in the stomach.
Yes.
And that's actually, that's a good thing, because it's performance anxiety helps us to perform. It helps us to be real, and it helps us to connect. If we didn't have that, we probably shouldn't be doing what we're doing, because we would be glib, we would be superficial, we would be superior. We're not any of those things. And so to have that performance anxiety is good. But if you can just think about people who are, two kinds of people who are attending events, those who are speaking and those who are listening, and those who might be engaged either on chat or invited to present on the screen as a person asking questions or sharing a story from the audience, which is very possible now in virtual. How can you reduce the anxiety around that? And one of the things that I think is really training and preparation. So what we do with our speakers is we give them a training. We have a tutorial built for them, and we have how-to articles and how to get ready, how to dress, how to position your webcam, how to set up your lighting, all of those things. How to hang a do not disturb sign on your doorbell, especially if you have pets. All those little things that people may not think about that would interrupt and detract from a professional event, so that they can be ready. And then what does your background look like? People always ask, well, how should I position? What's going to be in my background, and what are people going to see? They don't really know what to expect. And so we have to give them the expectations. And the next thing we do is we bring our speakers on for a technical rehearsal before the event starts. Give them lots of time to get grounded. And we've even done breathing exercises with speakers. We've given them coaching on, put your feet flat on the floor, put your hands flat on your desk, straighten your back, look straight ahead, take a breath, let it exhale, get centered, get ready. And all of those things help to take away the anxiety. And you can just see the anxiety melt away. And so a good moderator in the technical rehearsal part will not make people feel tense. They'll actually reduce tension and make people just relax and get centered and get ready. Some nice music could help. Just a beautiful atmosphere. Think of it like a spa, that you're getting ready to relax. And instead of getting tense and getting ready for an event, you're getting ready to have a wonderful experience. And we always, before we go live with an event, we always say we're going to have a beautiful event. Just a nice way to move in. And then for those who in the audience that we actually bring the audience members on the screen if they want to share. We call it a virtual reception, which is pretty amazing. And it's an immersive experience for the audience. It's a safe space because they don't have to do it. We let them know in advance that there's an opportunity. They can check a box on the RSVP form to let us know if they'd like to share, so they can prepare. And then we send them information in advance about how to get ready if you're going to be sharing. Make sure you have the right equipment. Make sure you have the right orientation for your device. And we tell them some of the things that we tell for speakers, because we learned the hard way. Sometimes people will share, and then afterwards they're embarrassed because it didn't look good.
Oh,
and they call us and they say, if I'd have known ahead of time.
Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? Yes.
So now we it's all about preparation and getting folks ready. And the other thing is, we don't multitask, and we don't want any of our speakers to multitask. So anytime the host controls the sharing, and we have a technical producer that's on every single event that helps with the sharing and the microphones and making sure that people just have to show up and when it's their time, start speaking. They don't have to think about, what do I do next? Where am I going from here? What do I have to do on my screen? We want the technology to melt away into the background and them just to be in the room. And that's key for speakers, and it's a key for the audience. And it really does make for a really event. And we've actually had testimonials. We're really proud of our testimonials. We have over 30 Google reviews, which are all 5-star. Oh, and we have dozens of Facebook reviews, and every single one is 5-star. And a lot of them make a mention of the fact that the technology just melted away, and they were just there. They didn't think about it.
So you had experience going into doing these and conducting virtual memorial gatherings. And you've learned, of course, we always learn whenever we're going through doing things. And as new technology arrives and as people become more familiarized with what's available, where do you see things going? I mean, it's an interesting world that we're in right now. And so what do you think's coming next?
Well, I think that what we're going to see is a lot more hybrid events. Mm-hmm. We're seeing that we're doing a lot more hybrid events now. And just an easy way to explain what is a hybrid event is that you have a physical location where you have more than one or two people. Because a virtual event is typically, one or two people at each location, at each device. But a hybrid event, you're going to have more than one or two people at one location, and then you'll have others joining online. And we're going to see a lot more of that in the association space. We're seeing it in the memorials and funerals now. And so it's really important to have the right team for that. So we have videographers that go on site and capture so that the family doesn't have to think about that. We can send them to a association event so that the event planner can focus on content and not worry about technology. And really having the right technology and the right team set up. I'm just going to show you a quick shot. You saw what my office looked like in 1979. This is what it looks like today.
I know. So, we need the side by side, right?
Yeah. So I
love that.
Yeah. So you're seeing quite a difference in technology. Makes a big difference. Having the right tools and the technology helped us go to market really quickly. When I stepped off that plane on March 12th, little did I know that on April 4th, we would be launching and having our first customer. That's how fast we were able to go to market. And I think that's a key for all of us, is to be able to adapt to changes in the market. Sometimes associations are really slow because they have to go through a lot of governance, but governance needs to kind of let loose the reins a little bit and allow the people who are running and closer to what's happening and available, have the tools available to be able to run with them. And shortly after we did some of our first virtual memorials, we had a customer who was actually a guest at one of our services come to us from the board of directors of the Boys and Girls Club and ask us if we could do a virtual auction for them, because they said, we're losing because we can't do our annual fundraiser. And so we did a virtual auction. We now have an auctioneer on our team, and we can do live virtual auctions. And we raised over $60,000 in about 20 minutes for a little club.
That's just incredible.
That was choking. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe our time. The only challenge I have with the 21 and 21 concept is that it is such a short amount of time to hear from such interesting people. Willis, if people want to connect with you, where can they find out more?
Well, they can go to our website. I'm just going to share one thing before we do.
Yeah.
This is an Inukshuk, and I don't know if you're familiar with Inukshuk or not. And Inukshuk is what the Indigenous people in northern Canada used as wayfinders. And so what they would do is they would build these rocks together into a monument that pointed the way to the next wayfinder, so that when people were traveling, they could find their way. And I think that we need to think of ourselves as wayfinders, as Inukshuks. If you have skills that you can bring to bear to help solve problems, you really need to put them to use. Think about your skill set and where is your sweet spot, and what kind of problems are there in the world, and are you using all your talents? I think that's key. That's one of the keys. I'm just going to share this really quickly because I know you're running out of time, but this is where people can find us. oldclayburn.com is our website, and it outlines all of our services, including our virtual memorials. So that's it's kind of a fun website, just nice and colorful, and demonstrates a little bit about what we do. So
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Willis. I really, really appreciate it. I've learned so much, and You know, I have to say, I still have more questions for you. So the next time we see each other, expect it. It's going to happen.
Well,
More
it's great.
stories.
I love your style and how you bring the stories out. So keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. Anukshuk, Wayfinders. I've learned so much today. I'm really, truly honored that Willis was able to share with us and teach us a little bit about ways that we can think differently about transforming our virtual events. And actually, I would say even our in-person exchanges with people. How are we taking our talents and using them to help others? You know, that's really, I think, ultimately a question we all need to be asking ourselves. So thank you to Willis for sharing your talk, your 21 and 21 talk with us today. And for anyone watching, you have now become 21 minutes wiser about what you can do to transform virtual events and also about maybe helping others find their way. What are you going to do with that knowledge? That remains up to you. If you follow Association Chat, you know I always close with a quote from Joseph Campbell, because we always want to ask questions. We always want to learn more. If you keep asking questions to learn every day, you'll remember that Joseph Campbell once said that the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Let's all be wayfinders, everyone.